Okay, now, this is part of the reason why we said pay attention to what your last partner was saying, because you're going to have to argue both sides. And a few of you really had little to nothing for some of your responses, which is okay, because you get to try again. But this time you should be on the other side of the debate. So, if your back is to me, you're now an internationalist. Okay? Remember, the one part of this entire Treaty of Versailles that most affects the United States is the creation of the League of Nations. Whose idea was the League of Nations? Woodrow Wilson. Okay? Do you ever hear people jokingly say, like, that's his baby or her baby, and you're not talking about a real child? It's like their favorite thing, like their car or their, some possession. The League of Nations is Woodrow Wilson's baby, and it's the first thing in the Treaty of Versailles. So internationalist, that's the thing you most want, because the idea is it'll help prevent future wars. Irreconcilable. You can pick any problem you want to cite within the League of Nations or the Treaty of Versailles, okay? But make sure you use the full text of it, and you can say, or point with your finger, this is one of my problems, or this is going to be a bad thing for the United States, okay? So, following the questions on the PDF, I believe question 1, irreconcilable, you get to ask first, correct? Okay? So it's going to be the same setup, but you're on the flip side of the argument. So, irreconcilable. You're up first. Stand and ask your fellow senator the first question.
All right. Honorable Senator, the Treaty of Versailles is clearly full of flaws. How can you support it?
Okay. Internationalists, you get 1 minute to come up with the best answer you can muster.
I'll let it watch you mustering your answer.
I already have my answers.
You can wear it around your neck, or you can hold it like a mic, whatever you want to do.
All right. Best answer I can come up with is the second question.
That's all I did.
Hey, what's up? Are you just on Facebook? Oh. You're just talking about selfies. Oh.
Okay, time's up.
I can come up with one.
Internationalist, your response.
I support the League of Nations because imagine a world in which no one can fight because there's a group of people waiting to attack the people who wants to attack you. Also, it could be grateful for America to join the League of Nations, have something in which all of the nations in the world could join together and stop war itself. World War I could have been prevented, but yet we're too lazy to see it coming. Also, if you sit there and look at the documents talking about the League of Nations, it can show that you can oppose stuff, and if you have an opinion on something, you can speak it out loud. Because you don't want some country sitting there trying to do something, and you can't. You don't want some country to sit there and start attacking someone, and you can't do anything about it. If in the League of Nations, you sit there and tell that country to stop it, and they have to.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
At this point in time.
Same difference.
Okay,
You actually still need
internationalist,
that.
your turn to ask question number 2.
My esteemed colleague, you say the tree is full of flaws, but I wonder, can you describe 2 of them? 2.
I would be delighted to.
You mean only two? You only want two? That could give you like 27.
That's right.
Okay,
28.
irreconcilable. You get a minute to come up with
Or
two
4.
specific problems
Too bad.
with the treaty.
We're just messing with this now.
Yeah. Hello, YouTube. Look at you. Let's say here. Wait, I forgot what's. Sometimes I forget which side I'm on. Ooh, I got flaws up the flaws, man.
Are you on the history of learning
No.
side.com?
No.
UK?
No. No.
This is pretty hard trying to defend the League of Nations when it failed pretty badly.
Yeah. Hey, no swearing for YouTube.
Common sense.
Hey, irreconcilable. You better have at least two specific problems with the treaty that you can point out. Remember, internationalists, if they have good responses, keep track of them so you can steal them from them later. Yeah.
Fellow Senator, there are many more than 2 examples of how the League of Nations failed and of its flaws. I will give you 2 today, as you have asked for. One example, clearly, would be that with the League of Nations, if not all nations are in it, then that obviously leaves out nations to be prone to revenge, just like Woodrow Wilson wanted to exempt from this. However, by doing this, only thing he did was to, in fact, increase the amount of revenge that Germany and the Axis forces wanted at the time. Another flaw with the League of Nations is that it was pretty bad and didn't work.
2. You gave me 1.
Okay.
That was 2.
Question 3, irreconcilable. You get to ask.
Senator, looks to me like the League of Nations could drag the United States into a heck of a lot of trouble. Why do you admire it so much?
All right, internationalists, you have a minute to come up with your response. All right, internationalists, you better have some specific things you can say you admire about the treaty.
I admire the treaty. Also, I admire League of Nations. For one, League of Nations aim to stop wars, to stop future wars, also to improve people's lives in other countries, right? It also encourages the disarmament of militaries. All right? also enforces the Treaty of Versailles. Because with League of Nations enforcing the treaty, what's the possibility of some dude rising up and starting another Great War? What's the possibilities?
Pretty high, I'd say. Pretty high.
I know.
Just don't bring up that.
How is it pretty high? We don't know about that.
You'll see here in about 20 years or so how high of a probability that is.
Also, the League of Nations helps improve security around the world. You know, you call in other people's armies to help out with different causes.
Of course, yes.
I know that could increase the possibility of America going to war,
And it will.
but what's the possibility of that also stopping another great war? Sit there and say in Africa, they want to rise up, you know, start attacking, you know, revolt against the great British Isles, you know. You can also, it sits there and says you can call in troops for different countries. So you're not just sit there and alone trying to fend off against an army by yourself. You call in different armies to help you, to solve the problem. How are we supposed to know that this is going to be successful without also having some problems, you know? It shows that we have to gain up and prove that we're worthy to stop problems.
Gain up.
I don't know. Can you just shut up? League of Nations is going to be a failure.
Next question, internationalists, you get to ask.
My fellow senator.
Question 4.
Yeah. My fellow senator, you talk about League of Nations causing trouble. Just what kind of trouble you talking about?
Starts with an A and ends with a dolph. Enough said.
I just want to start poking stuff on it.
Trying to think of a failure of
What's his Versaille?
a failure of League of Nations. Why is League of Nations good? Well, I don't know. Now I have something that could also help me.
My 6th period class got green medal?
They're all presidents they thought, but they needed a slap from me. Ben Franklin was not there. Still a cool picture.
Which one?
The guy flying with the kite and the Wolverine claws with lightning bolts coming out of him fighting Zeus.
Yes.
Zeus I personally like Transformer FDR with his wheelchair. Because he had polio and couldn't walk.
And then who's the one driving the 302 bus?
Which one?
The one driving the 302 bus.
First off,
Top left.
Oh, that's okay. Irreconcilable. Let's hear it.
What trouble am I talking about? Well, let us look back to how the way the Germans reacted to the League. Basically, Germany was given a choice to sign the treaty or be invaded by the Allies, which gave them no choice to sign the treaty and agree to the League. However, what Germany did later, which could be seen by Woodrow Wilson and everyone really, was a simple act of defiance, because nobody likes being like slapped in the face and being told to go do a chore, right? Nobody likes that. Germany didn't either. So they decided to try to kill everybody again. Obviously, they're very good at it, and we should have treated it differently.
Okay. Question 5 should be the irreconcilable senators.
Why can't you internationalists understand that our national sovereignty is more important than foolish dreams of collective security? Yeah? Might?
Okay, internationalists, you get a minute to come up with the best response you can. Irreconcilable. Make sure you're ready for your last question while you're sitting there with your teeth in your mouth. Like sitting there doing nothing.
I hate being an internationalist. Yeah, another one you actually have some good facts, but this one you kind of have to make it up. Okay, this can't happen.
All right, internationalists, let's hear your response.
Indeed, we do lose some of our sovereignty, but yet it's at a good price. We gain security. We gain strength. What good is sovereignty when you are invaded by other troops, another nation, and you lose it all? Would you rather lose some or lose it all? Would you rather have a greater force and protect yourself, or sit there and have a possibility of losing all of your sovereignty, becoming a slave, be under a different country? Would you rather risk it? Would you rather gamble with that fact? Because who says in the future that America would be taken over by a different country?
We got one thing to say for the camera.
Yeah.
You've got to risk it to get the biscuit.
Hey. I didn't say that at that point. What's a biscuit? But I would rather lose a little bit of sovereignty and still be mostly under control of my country than sit there and have some other person take it over.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the best answer I gave so far. Now I'm just gonna say this. Are you kidding? Are you irreconcilable are considering that collective security might have prevented this tragic war from ever occurring in the first place? What do you say?
Okay,
I'm just here so I won't get fined.
internationalists, if you haven't already, ask your irreconcilable partner question 6. Okay, you have a minute, irreconcilable.
You can't irreconcilable because you know what's gonna happen. I lost fair square. Or at least last time I did was home. Sat there and destroyed someone. It was brutal.
And I have people. Whether I'm in prison or
Brutality.
you know, I had Noel, Isaac, and White Rock.
There it is.
Okay, let's hear it.
You asked me what collective security might have prevented this war in the first place. Well, Trev Horror. Collective security might have aided in the beginning. However, once things started getting out of hand, other nations would have still been dragged into the war as they were by alliances, just like Austria-Hungary was pulled into it, France was pulled into it, Germany was pulled into it, Russia just kind of hopped in because they're freaking Russia, and well, same thing would have happened. The war would have happened either way, and if not, then plenty of people still would have died. Plenty of bombings, plenty of mass murders. Certainly the only way to find a unreprehensible answer to this was war, but now we can learn from it and do it differently next time.
Got something to say.
Let's hear it.
You're avoiding the question. Having collective security might have prevented it. Might. There's not. I'm just saying, if we could have already had this League of Nations formed before the war, could it have prevented the Great War? Could it? Because we already know that before the war, Germany is being overly aggressive against smaller countries. But with collective security, we could have possibly prevented it.
If the League of Nations did not include Germany the first time, where this supposedly could have prevented the war, if Germany was still unincluded in the League of Nations, then the exact same result would have happened. You see, there's no changing the fact that Germany still would have wanted revenge for anything that's going on, and they certainly would have wanted to help their allies in the first place, going against the League of Nations. And basically, all it really is instead of the League of Nations considering themselves allies, now they went from the allies to the League of Nations. The Axis forces are still the Axis forces. Certainly, if they wanted to start war again, it would be the exact same war against the exact same people.
You're also avoiding the fact, with League of Nations, other countries could have joined. China, they could have joined. With Russia also failing, China could have supported the Western Front. The Eastern Front, yeah, Eastern Front. With other countries joining with the League of Nations, we could have had a better chance at winning the war way faster, also enforcing more laws before anything could have happened.
I chose your side for both rounds. You have to see both sides. Okay? You're going to have to pick a side of your own free will. Okay? Can I have the mic? I won't till I'm done. Okay? So, you're going to have to pick your own side. Let me tell you the rest of the story. Here's the front page of the New York Times, okay, from March 1920, I believe. Unlike Obama's Iran deal, which did pass muster in the Senate and went into effect, the Treaty of Versailles was not ratified by the United States. And we recognize, if we don't sign this treaty, do we join the League of Nations? No. Why is that ironic? Whose baby was the League? Woodrow Wilson, our president. So, this is a really good example, when you get to government class next year, of a system in our government that keeps any one person or branch from becoming too powerful. You learned it in 8th grade. Do you know what it's called? Checks and balances. See how the president negotiated the treaty, he wanted it, but Congress basically said no. That keeps him from becoming too powerful. I can't say what's right or wrong. There were good arguments on both sides of this debate. Do you agree? There were. Okay, but we didn't join. The Senate said no. Okay? So, here's what this brings us to. We're going to let you pick a side in a minute, but I'm going to show you something that a lot of schools do that I think is like the high school equivalent of the League of Nations. And I used to teach in a school that did this. And all I'll say is I thought it was an interesting idea. I'm not going to say if I think it was good or bad. But I'm not saying that. I think it was interesting. And it's sort of like a League of Nations, where you give up a little bit of your personal sovereignty or power to other people, but for good reason, to avoid conflict or keep it from escalating. Because the idea of the League of Nations is when you have a border dispute with your neighbor, instead of invading him, which some of you would do that every little problem you had if you were the leader of a country, instead of doing that, you come to the League of Nations where all these countries sit, and you say, here's my side, he tells you here's his side, and they say, here's a good solution, and they sort of mediate the conflict like they're a middle neutral ground. Obviously, the League of Nations from last year didn't work very well because a couple key countries weren't involved. One of them being, obviously, we just said no to this treaty. The U.S. didn't join. Is that a problem for the League? Yes. Who is another key country that didn't get invited? Do you see the problem with saying, Germany, you start all these wars and you're such a bully, we're not going to let you into the club that tries to solve wars. Do you see why that's a stupid thing to do? Though one country you have to have in the League is Germany, because they're the ones starting all the problems. So it's like, to punish you, you don't get into the club to avoid war. Warmonger? That's not a really good decision. Plus, one key neutral country who's not in Europe and has a side in all these fights is the United States, and we didn't join. Russia's in the middle of a revolution. They didn't get invited either. Okay? So, after this, what you're going to do is pick a side, and your outline we're going to do in class Friday and at the end today. Okay? And that's going to be due in Canvas by Sunday night at midnight. So if you are gone tomorrow, do not say, I didn't know we had the outline. It's the last grade of the semester, and it's due Sunday night in Canvas. So,